Okay, so once again, thank you for joining for another session of Azure Power Lunch. As you know, we record these sessions and place our recordings on our YouTube channel. If you don't want to be recorded, you may want to drop off now. And so with that, we are going to move ahead with our session. Uh, Topic of discussion is latest updates for the Azure Managed Kubernetes. So here's what happened, and in the last few days, there is the couple of big conferences. I think it's KubeCon and Native Cloud Native Con, and based on that, there are a number of updates that has been announced in regards to Azure Managed Kubernetes, which is AKS. So we're going to talk about some of these updates, and we may not go in depth, but we will discuss it. There's some, and I have placed a link for Azure updates, and you can take a look at it. What other updates are there? So there are quite a few updates there for you to take a look. And I'm just picking some of the ones that are kind of seems very interesting. And interesting means, I mean, my customers have asked about it, or I have seen uh, some of the other customers or read about them that they are looking for those updates. So first, the one is the ability to have a static block allocation for Azure CNI. Okay, and let me, when I read about it, well, didn't make much sense to me, but when I went into the detail, it's very interesting. So, there are two models in Kubernetes for networking. You have KubeNet and you have the CNI um, and the CNI model. And then there is a CNI overlay, which is kind of called CNI V2. But let's stick to KubeNet. So KubeNet, that's the classic model that only supported for Linux. And with that, you have node IP addresses are allocated from the VNet. Pod IP addresses came from a separate range. There's a UDR for communication between pods to pod or from outside to pod, which may cause some performance degradation. Okay. With CNI, that is not the case because all of the IP addresses for pod and nodes come from the VNet or the subnet where AKS is deployed. But that raises an interesting problem, or like if your cluster is growing, as the cluster grows, what happens is that you may need more IP addresses, um, and you may run out of IP address space. And what you end up doing is rebuilding the cluster, which can be time consuming and may require a lot of effort depending on if there are actual customer using it. And so basically, uh, can cause problems. So what this allows you to do is it allows you, number one, to have separate address spaces for pods and nodes. So let's say that you deploy AKS in a cluster in a VNet. You can take a subnet and say that this is for my pods, and take another subnet that this is for my nodes. So they both grow independently. The pods grow in one subnet. You may have a very large allocation. Nodes may not be that large, but they grow there. Um, and one very interesting thing is, let's say that your cluster is growing, you need to add another node pool for a different application or extension of an application, things like that, to host an extension of application um, or a new application or whatever the case may be. You can have uh, pods for that node pool in another subnet. So you can have another subnet and you can assign that to the pods of that node pool. So as you can see, makes the growth of your cluster smooth, And since once again, why this CNI is powerful? Because you get IP addresses for pods and nodes. That's still the case, you know, and they're still coming out of your VNet, so they can communicate with each other. So all of those things are stays high performance, and simple in that case. But at the same time, you have now the ability to grow your cluster, by adding subnet allocation to IPs, to the pod and the nodes. I hope everybody gets it. And of course, if you're creating a new node pool for pods for that node pool, you can have another subnet that you can give to that node pool. And since these nodes and pods are now tied to separate subnet, you can have network policies like NSGs set up to block all traffic to the nodes, but allow traffic to the pods or allow traffic in between. So that's kind of creates a very interesting scenario. And at the same time, for this solution, both Azure Network Policy, NPM, and Calico works for this solution. So, any questions? Okay, move on. Okay, so the next thing is the deployment safeguards. Okay, so I think this is a very important feature as well. And by the way, I just want to clarify the first one, CNI static block IP allocation. This is in public preview. This one also in public preview. We are going for the public preview first, and then some of the GA ones as well. So what this allows you to do is it kind of bring policy add-on to the AKS for at the forefront and allows you to have apply best practices to your cluster. So there are certain policies, there are certain best practices like have the um, liveness probe, have the budget disruption budget for your pods, all of these things that are there, and you can have them these best practices applied at with two levels. You have the warning level. In that case, what will happen is whenever you do a deployment, you see a list of warning displayed that yes, you're deploying stuff on this cluster, but this cluster does not meet uh, or not following these best practices. Okay. The second one is more stringent one, which is basically the enforcement level. In this case, what's going to happen is that if you try to deploy something, the deployment will fail and you will get an error saying that you are not able to deploy because you have um, this enforcement policy in place. So fix those issues and then try to deploy. Okay. So I think both probably in the in your cluster, you may want to first try the warning one to make sure that you're following best practices. And once you're satisfied, then you go with the enforcement to make sure that you don't block some deployments unnecessarily. So that's important to note. And one other thing is, I forgot to mention one thing in the previous one, the CNI static block IP allocation. At this moment, if you are trying to use private link service with a load balancer to access a service, uh, that doesn't work with this if you have with this preview. So just keep that in mind. Okay, coming back, sorry for the back and forth. Deployment safeguard, and here is a list of safeguards that that are available as of this moment. You so these are applied through policy. And by the way, not only with the command line, you can see the application, you can go to the Azure policy portal and see how the policies are applied there. Okay, so both of these things are at your disposal. Any questions? And just keep in mind, this is also in public preview. and you have to basically enable the preview and then go with that. So this feature basically trusted launch for AKS. Once again, this is in public preview. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to take advantage or improve the security of Gen 2 VMs because the two key capabilities, one is the uh, virtual TPM, which has the kind of a trusted platform module, virtualized trusted platform module, which allows you to basically when your VM is booting up, it can make sure that all the bootloaders and OS kernels are signed and verified, and there is no kind of a bad malicious bootkit or rootkit there. So, and of course, that comes handy with a secure boot as well. So these capabilities are now available. So you can have the nodes, of course, which are the VMs that running the pods, which you run on which pods run. You can enable this trusted launch for AKS, and you can use that with now within public preview. So that's that. Any questions? Okay, so now we will go into a couple of items which are kind of as more and more organizations are running these AI models, more and more organizations need support for the infrastructure, need infrastructure support in AKS to run these models. And this one and the next one talks about uh, that exactly. So first one is this one is Kubernetes AI toolchain. That's an add-on that is available in public preview. And what this add-on allows you to do is it allows you to run these specialized model. It allows you to run those on AKS. Basically, allow you to run it, kind of a streamline steps and allow you to run these LLM deployments, based on the CPU, GPU resources that you have available, makes it easy to run those models. So that's an add-on that is now available in public preview. And so the whole goal of the module is that your setup reduce the setup time. So instead of like you kind of um, spending a lot of time in setting this up. Overall, the service setup time is reduced that you get to go to actually, get your business going instead of, fighting the infrastructure war. The second one, as I said, now we have Windows GPU support in AKS. Just keep in mind at this moment, AMD um, GPUs are not yet supported in public preview. And what this allows you to do is if you have workloads that need GPU supports like imaging and all that stuff or AI, you can run a node pool with GPUs and start running the NVIDIA driver. AKS will install the NVIDIA driver, and here we go. You can start running your um, AI and those type of workloads uh, on AKS by using Windows GPU support in AKS, which is in public preview. And just keep in mind, you don't have to. The point of this support is reduce the time of installing all that stuff manually. All of these components basically now are installed as a part. AKS will take care of it as you for the any of the infrastructure stuff like NVIDIA driver and the required components, and you are good to go. You just need to pick the GPUs. And as I said, at this moment, AMD is not supported, but NVIDIA VMs are. Okay. So now we talk about some of the GA items. One thing is that now we have a 5,000 limit um, by default in GA for standard and premium tier of AKS. So you can go up to 5,000 nodes, and that means 5,000 nodes or 200,000 pods per cluster. So this is the new limit. So AKS control plane has been updated, and it will scale up because Microsoft is responsible for the AKS control plane. And what they are doing is they are basically maintaining it and running with it. So that is controlled by uh, Microsoft, and they will scale up as the load based on the load in the cluster. So they will add more capacity to that control plane if there is more load on the cluster. So just keep in mind, it's just this increasing the number of nodes, but with nodes and pods, more load will come in, and Microsoft will address that on the control plane side. Okay. Oh, question. Sorry, guys, I missed that. So the question is there an example code deployment for GPU? I only see the setup, but no deployment example. That's a good question. Um, I I will try to find if there's an example. I think, yeah, so that's action item on me. So I will see if there is an example of having how to deploy the code on. I think the code should be the same way. I think it's the infrastructure. So if you have something that requires GPU to run, I think you will deploy it as such on AKS, as far as I know. And because in the end, all the drivers that supports GPU, basically talks to the GPU, they will be installed part of AKS. So you don't have to do anything. I'm addressing the question in the chat window. So hopefully that addresses your question. If not, please feel free to open the mic. So let's move on. Okay, so at this moment, uh, CNI overlay, which is sometimes called CNI V2. So this is the best of both worlds, where you have the dynamic nature of IP addressing that KubeNet provides, but the the IP address range of uh, or kind of the actual IPs for the pod that is a part of CNI both come together. So this is CNI overlay, and that now has both. It's a dual stack support, so you have the IPv6 and IPv4 that is now GA. Just keep in mind for Linux only. Okay, so that's why I mentioned it. GA is for Linux only, and just for the comparison, um, I just for the comparison, I just like showing you how many nodes and kind of what is the feature difference between CNI overlay and KubeNet. And just keep in mind this KubeNet is only supported for Linux, while CNI overlay supports both Linux and Windows platform. But the GA for dual stack is for Linux only. So just wanna make sure everybody is aware of it. Um, Second thing, I just want to mention one more thing here on the CNI overlay. If you are doing new deployments or, yeah, go ahead, please. Question. If you are doing new deployments, or if you are kind of building a kind of application from scratch, definitely start with CNI overlay. That's the direction. That's where most of the innovation is happening in terms of the networking path for AKS cluster. So, you know, go in that direction. And once again, as I always say, the opinion expressed on this call are not in my opinion only, and they are not the opinion of my employer. So just want to mention that. One more thing, a cost analysis add-on for AKS that is built on top of the open cost, an open source project uh, for the usage data collection that is now available in GA. So number one, it integrates with, and the best thing is it integrates with Microsoft Cost Management Analysis for the full portal experience, and it breaks down the cost of different construct in Kubernetes, like the cluster and different Azure asset categories, things like that. So you see a complete breakdown. Where are you spending your money? So I think that's very important because as you are investing more and more on Kubernetes, more and more applications are deployed. It's important to know where your where your costs are coming in, where you are spending most of your money, and how you can kind of optimize those costs. Reduce your expenditure, and by saving that money, you can make investment in different areas. So I think the cost analysis sometime is, I mean, a lot of focus is put on performance and things like that, but I think cost should be front and center along with performance, because yeah, you can throw a lot of money and maybe have a very performant application, but if it's not cost effective, I can tell you it won't be long lasting. So here is a list of resources. So I'm gonna let me just move the screen here. Hopefully everybody can see. So here are all the updates here. So what I'm doing is I'm filtering based on container. This is the Azure update website, the link I have provided. Here are all the updates. So please take a look at it. I'm not covering all of them. I've just covered some of the ones that, you know, kind of made more uh, sense to me and seems more interesting. Please go ahead. And by the way, this is the site which I think you should bookmark it because that's where latest Azure updates appear as they are announced, and it's a good way to keep track because Azure is advancing at a very rapid pace. There are updates happening every day, every hour, sometime. So yeah, so please take a look at this, bookmark this link, and use this link to um, see what's coming in regards to Azure. And by the way, any questions, folks? I know we have a few more minutes. I just want to open the floor. If there are any questions, feel free to open the mic, ask it, or and by the way, some of these updates we may cover in depth, like more with demos and things like that, because I thought we won't have enough time to cover it with demos, but we may cover a few of these updates with demo and which kind of leads, let's see, like, okay, how they work in actual. So we'll go from there probably in the future session, but not today. So just wanna ask one more time if there are any questions, please feel free to ask either in the chat window or open up your mic. Okay, so if there are no questions, I will give everybody their 4 minutes back and hope to see everybody next week for another session of Azure Power Lunch. Thank you very much for joining.